Hi, this is Julie with an invitation for you before we get started. In this interview with my guest, Heather Chauvin, she talks about finding the courage to say yes to something that you know will fulfill your soul. For me, that's saying yes to writing a book, something I've envisioned for myself for a long time. To help make my dream real with more ease and less overwhelm, I've signed up for the Tiny Book course. Taught by Alexandra Franzen and Lindsay Smith, the program helps you go from idea to published book in 45 days. Smaller in length, but still mighty in impact. Take a look at tinybookcourse.com to see if this calls to you, and let them know that Mother's Quest sent you. I'd love to experience the program with you and cheer one another on. Now, on to the show. Hi, and welcome to Mother's Quest, a podcast for moms like me ready to live our own truly epic life. I'm Julie Neal, a life and leadership coach, community builder, writer, and mom to two high-energy boys who challenge me to grow into my best self. I'll be right there. Where was I? It was many months ago now, as the whole world was first shutting down and sheltering in place, that I sat down to a conversation with leadership coach and strategic parenting expert Heather Chauvin. As back to school unfolds now with unique challenges for so many of us, I wanted to bring this episode to you, filled with wisdom that can help light our way. Based on a question Heather asks herself, how good can this get? Heather is the creator of the Mom is in Control podcast, a mostly solo show where she tells it like it is. She reveals her most vulnerable truths about womanhood, parenting her 3 boys, living through stage 4 cancer, navigating marriage, and creating business success without burning out. Featured on the Huffington Post, the OWN Network, CTV, Real Simple Magazine, and more, Heather draws on her experience as a former social worker, health advocate, and inspirational speaker, giving women permission to live more, drop the guilt, and ask for what they need. Before I share my biggest takeaways from this conversation, I want to introduce former teacher, homeschooling mom, and founder of Gnome on the Roam, Ann Armstrong.
Hello, my name is Ann Armstrong. I'm creator of My Gnome on the Roam, a brand of toys and tools that help busy families build adventures into little pockets of time. I'm excited to invite you to share in the wisdom exchange between Julie and Heather Chauvin. As a cancer survivor, Heather faces this pandemic with an attitude of, how good can this get? How can I transform this experience in time into something my child will remember and still take care of myself? My own experience in 2019 has given me a similar attitude. After a 2-month battle with a brain tumor, the death of my father, and a long overdue divorce, I'm approaching this pandemic with an attitude of what is possible. I've stepped away from my 24 years as a teacher to support my own son in virtual school. And I've created a program that supports families who are choosing to educate from home this year. The program asks the question, how good can this get? How can we author this experience for our families and build memories and experiences that create a love of learning and adventure without tests and grades? With the help of our Family Adventure and Creativity Kit and our app, which have gained the recommendations of Dr. Shefali Sayberry, as well as Dan Heath, author of the best-selling book, The Power of Moments, we have created a self-guided curriculum that uses adventures and intentional fun as ways to make learning stick. We would love you to join us in our journey to transform this school year. I'm delighted to dedicate this episode of Mother's Quest to the dear Megan Baker. Though I didn't know Megan well, she was a voice who helped me navigate 2 months alone in a hospital as I battled my brain tumor at the beginning of 2019. She reminded me that I'm never really alone and always surrounded by support. Even though she's gone now, I feel her here with us. Please enjoy this episode.
Thank you, Anne, for the incredible work you're doing to help families find adventure during these times, for sharing how you moved through your own journey, and for dedicating this episode to our mutual friend, Megan Baker. As you'll hear in this episode, it was actually Megan's question to me about how we can still strive to live our epic life in the face of health challenges that prompted me to interview Heather. While I'm so sad this episode didn't come out in time to support Megan, I'm certain her courageous question and the thoughtful insights from Heather that came as a result will help so many of us to be more present with what is and learn to receive support as well as give when things start to spin out of control. As we move into back to school in a way we never have before, I hope you'll join me in taking Heather's challenge to ask for what we need, even if it's uncomfortable, as we face the unknown and explore the question in our own lives, how good can it get? I'm Julie Neal, and this is Mother's Quest. Heather, welcome to the Mother's Quest podcast. I'm so excited to have you here. And as almost always happens for me, the timing could not be better to be in this conversation with you. I just feel like you're the perfect person to shine some light on what we're all dealing with right now in the midst of sheltering at home and the coronavirus.
So excited to be here. Thank you for having me, Julie. And definitely, if we were resisting something before, it is now being gifted to us to take a look at it again.
Just before we officially started, I was asking if you had any intention for our conversation today. And when it came time for me to share my intention, I decided I wanted to share it as part of the interview. And there are two things that I'm really holding for myself in terms of what I'm open and receptive to learning from you. And I know you'll surprise me with many more. One is we're all in the midst of a new reality right now at time of recording. Most of us are sheltering in home in some way. Many of us are finding ourselves now in charge of whatever we were holding before, plus homeschooling our children. There's a lot being asked of us. And I know that you really specialize in helping mothers kind of take back control when things feel like they're spinning out of control. I'm so excited to hear what you have to share with us about that. And then secondly, I invited an inquiry on Facebook a month or so ago, just asking what are people most on a quest for? And that I wanted to make matches between what people are looking for and women I know that are out there that I think could shed some light. And one particular woman in my community is in the midst of battling cancer. And her question was, how do you still hold on to wanting to live an epic life, which is the Mother's Quest framework, when you're battling a health crisis? Or I feel like the crisis we're all moving through right now. I wanted to just plant those seeds of intention. You don't need to answer them in the moment, but I'm really kind of knowing that by the end of this conversation, there's going to be some gems from your journey that will help us.
For sure. I'm excited to dive in.
So we're going to start with the question I ask every guest. Tell me a little bit about your own childhood and the impact that your mother has had in shaping who you are today.
Oh boy, how long is this interview?
Let's do the abbreviated version.
Yes, the nutshell version. First of all, my mother now lives with me. It was intentional. It was planned. My parents were divorced when I was really, really young, and it was just my mother and I. And my mother stayed single for most of my childhood. And then every other weekend, I would go and visit my father, my stepmother, and her children. So I had two different realities growing up. I am the woman I am today because of the contrast that I experienced in my childhood. And going through this process, becoming who I've become, speaking about what I speak about, the book that I'm writing, it's been really interesting when I get asked this question, because I want to be respectful of my mother and her story, but also understand that the things that have happened to us are opportunities for growth. And as a child, I did not feel seen. I did not feel heard. I did not feel understood. I developed a lot of the same coping strategies as my mother. And one of those was sleep and avoidance and shame. And I was just so angry and frustrated and resentful, and met with the traditional mindset, which was, let's go to the doctor and let's get you tested and let's put you on medication. And too often I had no idea how to express the emotion, how to express what was going through me. And it wasn't until I got older, until I became a mother, that I really had to show up and do the work. Because one of my biggest fears was, I do not want my children to feel the way that I felt as a child. Looking back and going through it, I wouldn't be as strong, as resilient as I am today. I wouldn't be as motivated to break a lot of those generational patterns because of the experience I had as a child. And looking at my mother as an adult with wounds that I've healed and not being triggered by our relationship. I mean, we all have triggers. We all have moments and work that we need to do. But I can see how trauma can stay stuck. And I can see how people come from a place of learned helplessness. And it's not my job to fix my mother. It's not my job to control how she lives her life. It's an opportunity for me to kind of take the baton. I see this not as a relay race, but she did the best that she possibly could. And now it's my job to educate myself, to work on myself, to heal and undo, and just make sure that I can become the mother that maybe she wanted to be, but didn't know how. We have so many opportunities in front of us. So yeah, I had to do the deep, deep work that she passed off to me unconsciously.
I'm thinking about and hearing you talk just a few weeks ago when the world seemed like a different place. I got to go with my mom and my sisters to Oprah's live event, and to hear her talk about her relationship with her mother. She closed out the day with the most remarkable story that had us all just with tears streaming down our face about, as her mother was really getting ready to pass away, how she had to finally come to a place of honoring that even though it was so painful, everything that happened in her life and in her relationship with her mother absolutely shaped Oprah into the person that she is today. And she was able to really thank her for even the things that her mother did that were loving and did set her on a trajectory for her life, like sending her to live with her father when she became pregnant. So I'm really touched by how even challenging experiences can really shape you in who you are, and then give you the opportunity to share what you've learned with other people. I know that you do that in so many ways. I would love to hear what you feel like you are most on a quest for in your life and how you're bringing that to people.
If you would have asked me this 10 years ago, it was just to survive. And this was before. So 6 years ago, I was diagnosed with the stage 4 cancer. And my quest at that point was not just to survive, just to live. But previous to that, with the heavy burden that I carried on my back, I think through my teen years, and I can't even say early 20s, because I became a mother when I was young, when I was 18. And after that, it was this fight or flight, looking at my son and just being like, I will not be a statistic, which was my mantra. And my quest was to become the best version of myself then. But I didn't know what that was. You hear about it. You see it, you read the books about it, you see people who have gone through really difficult times, and you're kind of sitting on the sidelines thinking, how is that even possible? Because you've never been that. You've never experienced that. It's one thing to experience an epic life or to feel that fulfillment or contentment, and then have a setback in your life and go, okay, I've been there once, I can rise again. I had to have this sense of hope and faith that I could get to where I wanted to be just by taking action, and fear was driving me. I was a very different person then. And so now the quest for my life is, how good can it get? Through the work that I do, at some point, the pain turned into curiosity, and then curiosity turned into excitement, and excitement turned into possibility. Like there was just so many evolutions of what a quest looked like for me. actually for 2020, my whole philosophy or my word of the year, intention of the year is like, how good can it get? How good can it get in every aspect of my life? And then of course, this whole pandemic happened and it set me back a little bit, but not that much. There's many things that have happened in my life where this is not my first rodeo. I feel like I've been here multiple times in this time. I'm not dying. I didn't just take a pregnancy test and go, oh shit, I'm pregnant. This was not intentional. So I'm like, okay, I got to stay inside for a few weeks and keep my family safe. Like we're good to go, right? Like this is peanuts compared to what I've experienced before. But it does put into light as to how good can I make it having my children home and working from home? How good can I feel mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually? And that is the filter through the way that I see every single day, every single action, every single human interaction. How good can it get? Because I think when you experience the opposite for so long in your life and you've had a glimmer of hope, you really begin to reevaluate how you show up in the world. Yeah, that's definitely my quest right now.
Wow, I love that so much. I'm already seeing my own patterns shifting a little bit about what my daily reality is now, guided by that question. How good can it get? How good can I make it with the parameters that we have for us right now? And I'm also thinking about my own words for the year, which were structure and synchronicity, and how, of course, it's not unfolding in the way that I thought it would. And I also had a commitment around wanting more live connection. And I thought that was going to mean like in person. And I think it's calling me to figure out ways to be connected live, but not face to face. So thank you for that invitation to rethink about some of my intentions for the year.
Mm-hmm.
I want to delve now into what I call the epic guideposts. I think that you're familiar with Mother's Quest a bit, but I'll just reground both of us. The idea of living an epic life has two connotations for me when I created Mother's Quest. One was really influenced by the work of Joseph Campbell and this idea of being on a hero or heroine's journey, and that we can all step into living that kind of a journey, but shaping it in the way that we want to, not having to follow somebody else's narrative, but really being the author of our own story, especially when we're raising our children. I think so often mothers just become a martyr and feel like it's all about helping our children realize their potential and their dreams. And we forget how important it is to live ours. So that's the first meaning. And then also EPIC is an acronym mnemonic for the guideposts that I think help us to live that life when we're raising our children. And E stands for engaged, and that's about being mindfully engaged with our children. P is about passionate and purposeful impact, the ways that we make a difference in the world beyond our family. I is invested in ourselves, and C is connected to a strong support network. So I'd love to delve into each of these guideposts and hear what you've learned about how those show up in your life and how to intention around each of those help you to live a better life. Before we go there, I'm always curious to know in what ways that does or doesn't resonate for you, the idea of living an epic life.
I think that's the purpose of life. I did not believe that before. I just believe that we are supposed to pursue and grow and evolve. And that is why we are here at this time on this earth. Oftentimes that's not the perception that we have. And then we slowly shrinkle. I just made that word up.
Made a new word.
Shrinkle, shrivel and wrinkle at the same time. Shrinkle.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's like if we're not moving, if we're not evolving, if we're not growing, if we're not thinking, how can I? And evolution, like that is what's happening right now. Who we were a month ago is not who we are today. And if we don't pivot and think on how we can grow and evolve, we're going to be stuck. And so I'm all about it.
The first guidepost E, as I mentioned, is about being engaged mindfully with our children. For each of these, I'd love to hear what your biggest lesson learned has been, but also how that might help us all in the situation we find ourselves right now, bring that into making things as good as they can be while we're sheltering in place.
Yeah. So engaging mindfully for me is being present for what is. And I'm a huge advocate. And I talk a lot about this on the podcast, in the resources that I provide on my website, about your children's behavior is speaking to you. It's not there to make your life miserable. Mindfulness was actually my first introduction into personal development. And engaging mindfully is understanding how you feel and what you're observing and not judging it, just being curious. Like, oh, he's upset. Oh, he just told me to F off. Like, what is that? Like, why? What's going on? Is he hungry? Is he tired? Is he frustrated? Is he angry? Does he need space? Do I need space? And to me, that's what mindfulness is. It's not mindful of like your mind is full, but mindful of curiosity and opportunity in that moment.
And how many children do you have and how old are they?
I have 3 boys. They're 15, 10, and 7.
Oh, yeah. Interestingly, you and I both have that spread. I have a 7-year-old and a 16-year-old. So we're always straddling different developmental phases. Sure. What would you notice in kind of what your current reality is? What are some of the ways you've had to draw on this lesson the most?
It's interesting because old me would have had a structure, routine, and wanted to follow it to the T. And if, we didn't follow it, then that day was considered a failure. Mm-hmm. Now I plan, I routine, I structure, and then we try to mold ourselves into it. But I expect that 99.9% of the time, it will not go as planned. I even mean that for myself, right? If I have a 30-minute workout planned in the morning and I don't do it at the exact moment that I say I'm going to, or it's only 20 minutes because I was interrupted, it's not a failure. It's just keep failing forward, keep moving forward. That is where progress comes. So with the boys, one thing that's really supported this process is asking them, what do you want to learn? It's a mix between, I interviewed one of my friends. She is the founder of the 5-hour school week. I am not a homeschooler. We've dabbled in it like a hybrid version if we're traveling for long periods of time. And, in your mindset, you're thinking, or your mind, you're thinking it needs to be like traditional school, but it's not. So she was super helpful. I did an interview with her as well on that topic. And it was interesting because she's like, ask your children what they want to learn. And my go-to was, oh, yeah. How often do we do that? How often do we ask our children, what do you want? What do you need? We're so used to dictating, you need to do this, you need to do that. So we had a team meeting, a family meeting, and I was like, what do you want to learn about? And it had nothing to do with school. It was like photography. I want to learn how to get better on my scooter. I want to learn how to draw better. So I was like, great, we're going to put that in your schedule so that you're doing a little bit of that every single day, because you're going to tell me you're bored all the time, and screen time is not going to be your go-to. That will be your reward.
I love that. Okay, I'm taking notes, and I already have so many ideas of how things are going to shift starting today for us. And I love this idea of really opening them to what do you want to learn about during this unique opportunity. Thank you. Let's move to the next guidepost P, passionate and purposeful impact. What are the biggest lessons that you've learned about how to make a difference beyond your family?
I don't know where I picked this up. I don't know if it was like in my DNA or if it's in my background as a social worker. I think it's, the empath in me, the sensitive soul. But one, when you've gone through hardship and you've seen how people have supported you, it's nice to be able to give back because you have a connection there, right? You know how they're receiving it or not. But giving an impact is pretty much my guidepost. I am not driven by money. I'm driven by impact. So even something, it is entwined in everything that I do, even with this whole quarantine thing going on. You go crazy in your house and my brain goes to, how can I be of service to the community? But you can't really volunteer right now. So what are you going to do? And the local food banks are running out of food, right? Because they don't have volunteers and nobody's donated because they're hoarding all the food for themselves. But there are some people who want to give. So even my children, I created a little, like taking a regular piece of paper and I posted on it, hey, food banks need food. Wednesday at this time, we're going to drive around and just put a can or two in your mailbox because they have big mailboxes. or leave it on your doorstep and we'll pick it up. If you have more that you want that won't fit in your mailbox, just text me or call me. And it is amazing. And we just went up and down our own street. It is amazing to see the text messages that are coming in or people saying, I'm just going to drop it off on your porch. It really creates connection without that human interaction, like the physical interaction. Again, it's because I'm always thinking about how can I be of service? How can I? And it gives me life. It gives me a sense of purpose. And it's got me through some dark times. And now being in the position that I am, I think it's a privilege and also a responsibility.
I'd love to hear a little bit more here about even when you were battling cancer, whether this guidepost was still possible. Because in the question that I mentioned, a member of our community raised earlier, I think she's really grappling. She's so much about being of service and making a difference and having her life feel like it's mattering in the midst of this health crisis. I think she's challenged by how you continue to do that and how you continue to hold bold dreams for your life. What did you learn about whether or how that's possible when you're going through something like that?
I love this question. And one of the surprising things that I learned and discovered in my life was we love to give. And the hardest part is learning to receive. Mm-hmm. And too often women overgive. They're people pleasers and they're dying inside, which is the title of my TEDx talk, which is Dying to be a Good Mother. And we get recognition for that. We get recognition for doing it all. And we can still be of service to other people. But part of being of service to others is also learning how to receive. A particular story is I remember when I completely surrendered to the fact that I could not give and be the person that I used to be when I was going through traditional treatment. And that's a whole other conversation. But I was going through treatment. I was very weak. I was in bed. I could barely talk. And people didn't ask me what I needed. They just did. People would knock on the door. Some I knew, some I didn't even know. My husband would say, "Who's this?" And I'm like, I have no idea. Mm-hmm. They would just drop off food. People would drop off money. They would drop off donations and offerings. And I realized very quickly that by me rejecting help was doing that person a disservice to their own healing. So it's the same as wanting to make a donation to the food bank and me collecting all of these cans and knocking on their door or putting it on their step. And they're like, "We do not want your food." It's like we have this desire to serve, but the recipient has to be open to receiving. And so to be able to really create this connection of, like reciprocity and connection and healing and making sure that we feel full is sometimes there's seasons of giving and sometimes there's seasons of receiving. And I definitely had to surrender and learn to receive so that I could give in a bigger way. But I also still did give at that time. So one thing that brings me life is coaching and working with families. And I had clients through that time. And I would talk to people on the phone and I would still coach. And I remember after those calls, like my energy would just rise up. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I feel alive. And that was how I could still give to other people. But I had to do both. And I noticed that when I was learning how to receive and give, that is when the magic really started to unfold.
That's so powerful. That is a great segue into the next guidepost also, which is I invested in yourself. You clearly have had a commitment to this incredible kind of self-reflection and learning and growing. What would you say are the biggest lessons you've learned about how to make that possible for yourself?
This is the interesting part. I was financially invested in myself previous to getting sick, previous to being diagnosed with cancer. I like to say when cancer entered my body, I don't like to take ownership of it. I actually posted the intro of my podcast as something about being a cancer survivor. And then in brackets, I say, I have a hard time with that term because I didn't really, quote unquote, survive anything. And what does that mean if somebody didn't survive? Did they fail? I'm like, we are all just moving through things. I don't think we need to label it. But in that moment, what I discovered is that I did invest in myself previously. I read the books, I did the workshops, and I even had coaches to support me in my business. But investment to me now is completely different. Yes, financially, that's probably the easiest investment we can make. It's so easy to get the gym membership, right? To invest in the gym membership. And it's also easy to maybe physically force yourself to go. But energetically, are you all there? Have you made this commitment and conviction to follow through with who you say you want to be? That's the hardest part. And so investing in yourself is not necessarily, to me, believing that you are worthy of investing in yourself. It is having the courage to say yes to something that scares the crap out of you, that you know is going to fulfill your soul, that you know is going to make an impact in those around you, and working through the emotional stuff that goes through it. So it's uncomfortable, but to me, investment is financial, it's time, it's energy, and it's on a deeper level. Am I really committed to becoming the person that I say I want to be?
Amazing. And what would you say is your biggest practice, the practice that you have in your life that most helps you to make that possible?
I have a lot of practices in my life. And I am the first one to say that I am not consistent on a regiment per se. I am consistent in chronically showing up. Right now, like I'm not the type of person that says, okay, every day at 5 a.m. I'm doing this and doing this, and this is exactly what my routine looks like. I have a whole toolbox of things. I would say fitness is number one. And what I mean by fitness is moving my body. That has been a game changer for me. And previously, I always thought it was like slow yoga and slow movement, but sometimes it's fast movement. Sometimes it's weights and just feeling into what I need. I would say physically being committed to moving my body on a daily basis for my health and how I want to feel and show up in the world has been the number one game changer. And many other things. I would say also clean eating is another one, and writing. And I mean like crappy journal writing. I don't mean writing a book.
Mm-hmm. Just an outlet for expression.
Yeah.
And do you find a way to write in some way daily?
Yes and no. Some days I won't beat myself up if I don't. Because I'm in the book writing process, I have to be more consistent with it. I love morning pages. I love just getting my thoughts out. I love brain dumping my to-do list. I love pen and paper and just spending time with myself to just let it out and organize my thoughts. I would say that's number one. And I probably do that most days, but if I don't, I'm not a failure.
Yeah. Let's go to the last guidepost, C, which stands for connected to a strong support network. And this guidepost is all about the relationships that matter in your life, whether you have a partner, friends, colleagues, clients. What are the biggest lessons you've learned about how to be in community and not isolated while you're on your journey?
I think the more connected I am with myself, the more I can be in connection with others. And sometimes people find it very difficult to be in community with other people, especially women with women, because of our projections of our own insecurities. And what I've noticed is hurt people. And everyone is just projecting, or it's displaced pain, right? So fear, judgment, all of this, or gossip, it's just displaced pain. And so when I'm in a relationship with somebody where I'm feeling like there's a block or there's no connection there, I just go back to myself. And again, going back to how can I be of service to this person? Compassion is huge, but community has been a game changer for me. And I also realized that not like one person can't be everything for me. So, I'm married. My husband cannot be everything for me. He can't be my friend. He just can't be everything. He can't be my business coach. He can't be my therapist. He can't be my dentist. He can't be my financial advisor. it takes a village, and that is really, really true. And the more you're able to learn how to receive and accept help, we take the pressure off people that they need to be all these things for us, and we just allow them to be who they are. So I think now more than ever, we're realizing physical connection is so important. It's like the core, it's a basic human need. And when we can be in community with other people and just see and accept them for who they are, we get bits and pieces from everyone. And I think that's what makes the world go round.
Thank you for sharing all of this. I want to ask you now, before we close with any acknowledgments or takeaways from our time talking together, what one thing you would invite me or anyone who's listening to take action on in our lives from the lessons that you've learned?
I guess the challenge I would like to gift everybody is to ask yourself, what is it that you know to be true that you need to implement into your life that maybe makes you feel guilty or afraid or uncomfortable? And I just encourage you within the next 24 to 48 hours to take that action, whether it can be using your voice and saying, I need to go for a walk, or I'm going to take a bath, and just creating space for yourself in the world, or sending that email, or signing up for that course, or just something that makes you uncomfortable. I invite you to do that, because you begin to take a stand for how you want to feel in your life. And that's the first step in order to creating that epic life under your definition, whatever that is for you.
When the discomfort gets in the way of the action, what have you found is the biggest way to move through that?
I don't find that it's the discomfort that gets in the way. It's our lack of wanting to feel it.
Ooh.
It's not the feeling that gets in the way. It's just I don't even want to say our inability, because we are not going to die. We can feel it. Yeah, it's feeling it and doing it anyways.
Mm-hmm. Well, that then brings me to some of the things I want to reflect back that I'm taking from our conversation. And the first thing that I wrote down as we were talking is this real commitment to being with what is. And I hear you saying that in the challenge as well. Just really appreciate all the different ways that you've learned to surrender, to feel, to be present, to be mindful to what's really here.
Mm-hmm.
And wow, how much we could really use a reminder about that in what we're all moving through right now. I love your question for the year. How good can it get? And I'm going to now be holding that in my mind about how we shape this unique time together as a family. And I also really appreciate the way that you are committed to looking at structure and practices and inquiry and routines and trying to move into action to make those things possible, but then also really letting go of any sense of failure when it doesn't go exactly as you laid it out, and really holding that that's like part of the process to expect that.
Yeah.
And then the last gift I would say is realizing how in living our epic lives and in stepping into our purpose, how learning how to receive is as important as learning how to give. Thank you for all of that.
This was so fun. Thank you, Julie.
I'm always curious to know if there's anything that came into sharper focus or that you're leaving with that you didn't arrive with when we first sat down together.
I think it's that remembering through the messy action that we take, looking back and realizing how far we've come, because it's so easy to think we're not enough, we're not doing enough, we're not being enough. And also, I don't know if I was watching something, and I'm trying not to pay attention to a lot of the stuff out there right now, but I was reflecting, and it just came back to me during this conversation. This can be such an overwhelming time for people, and we're being triggered right now. Maybe it's financially, maybe it's emotionally, physically. And yet I hear from so many people that they crave this time with their children. They crave this time with themselves, with their families. And now that they have it, they don't know what to do with it. So I think we're all going to look back very quickly after this experience and realize what we did have and the opportunities we did have around us for the time and space that we're so badly craving. And now that we have it, what are we going to do with it?
I have a counter challenge for you. I would love to know in these weeks with this space and time that you're talking about, that you also have, what that one thing might be that you know that you need to do and that you want to take action to. Would you be willing to share that? I know you're part of the Mother's Quest community. I would love to hear what you identify if you're open to saying yes to the challenge too.
Yeah, I think it would be creating that space to be with my children. I am a breadwinner. I'm the breadwinner. My husband stays home or works. He works within my company as well, but he is the one spending more time with the children while I'm working, while I'm having these calls. And because we can't have that family outing time, it's like, well, what else are you going to do with yourself? So I think it's having more of that time and maybe even creating some type of memory. I did have a thought, and I think this is giving me the opportunity to stop, to think and reassess. But whether we're doing like a family painting together or taking some photos and, printing those photos and putting them on the wall, creating some type of art as a family so that we can look back on this time and remember those memories.
Ooh, okay. I've got my wheels turning now thinking about that too for ourselves. What is like some kind of a record of what this time has meant, what we've learned, what we've accomplished together. I love that. Well, Heather, thank you so much. I'm so grateful that we have finally had this time together, and I look forward to sharing this conversation and continuing to learn more from you.
I think it's beautiful what you've created, Julie, and I'm just so excited and grateful that I had the opportunity to be a part of it.
Thank you. Enjoy your time and your pursuit of the question, how good can you make it? Take care. Thank you so much for coming along with me on this episode of the Mother's Quest podcast. I hope this conversation sparked something that will help you live your epic life. If you'd like to get show notes and learn more about how to join the Mother's Quest community, visit mothersquest.com. And while you're there, I would love it if you would follow the prompts to subscribe, leave a review on Apple Podcasts, and help us to spread the word. I want to end with some words to help light the way on your quest. Seize the day, love your people, honor your gifts. Until next time.